4 News Now, Bryan Kohberger admits to killing 4 University of Idaho students to avoid the death penalty.
Team coverage on why the victims' families are split over the state's decision to offer him a plea deal and the evidence the state planned to use to convince a jury Kohberger committed these murders.
And you're going to want to keep that sunblock happy. I'm tracking plenty of sunshine and warm temperatures on the way, but cooler than we saw today. I'll show you if the heat could mess up your 4th of July plans and when we might hit some triple digits. You're watching 4 News Now at 6.
How do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
After more than 2.5 years, finally an admission of guilt for the murders of Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Bryan Kohberger admitted to killing them in their off-campus home to avoid the death penalty. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Derek Dice.
And I'm Kirsten O'Connor. The victims' families are split on if the state should have offered Kohberger a plea deal. Jordan Smith is live in Boise. And Jordan, you heard from 2 of the victims' families. Their feelings about this deal were polar opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. On one hand, you have the Goncalves family who said, this is letting Kohberger off the hook. On the other side, you had Maddie Mogen's family who was in full support of this deal, and just a lot of emotions running high today. And naturally, as you would expect, it was emotional in court today. When Kohberger walked into that room, you could feel the room tense up a little bit. Kohberger didn't make eye contact with anybody else other than his attorney, Ann Taylor, shot her a smile and then sat down beside her, and proceedings were underway from there. And directly behind Kohberger were his family, watching their son plead guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. His face was emotionless, his voice was steady. He sat there motionless as the judge asked him questions about his guilty plea. And Kohberger's response is very quick, very concise to the judge.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
Did you kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being?
Yes. And back to what you were saying, Kirsten and Derek, a half hour later, Madison Mogen's family addressed a wall of media in front of the courthouse with their perspective on this, their lawyer reading a prepared statement about their thoughts on this plea deal.
We love you, Maddie, and we miss you. We support the plea agreement 100%. While we know there are some who do not support it, we ask that they respect our belief that this is the best outcome possible for the victims, their families, and the state of Idaho.
And those who don't support it would be the Goncalves family. They're furious with this plea agreement. Kaylee's father says, like I mentioned, this is letting Kohberger off the hook. Now, Judge Stephen Hippler ultimately accepted Kohberger's plea deal, which means he will not face the death penalty. Instead, he'll be sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences. Again, emotions running high in that courtroom. Some happy with the decision. For some, this is some sort of a step towards closure. For others, like the Goncalves, as I mentioned, this is still a frustrating moment for them. Derek, Kirsten.
Jordan Smith live for us in Boise tonight. Thank you, Jordan. And the University of Idaho released a statement following the guilty plea. Reading in part, "We will never forget the 4 incredible lives taken on King Road. They are forever Vandals, and each holds a place in our Vandal family." Before Kohberger's change of plea, the prosecution presented a substantial portion of its case against him.
They highlighted a timeline indicating the groundwork for the crime began several months earlier. Hunter Bertram is in studio sharing the evidence the state planned to use to make its case.
Derek, Kirsten, in court today, State Prosecutor Bill Thompson presented his argument for Kohberger's guilt, noting a major piece of evidence indicates Kohberger's phone was found to have been near the King Road home more than 20 times prior to the murders. The state reporting today, before the murders, Bryan Kohberger moved to Pullman in June of 2022 to study at WSU. Prosecuting evidence shows starting on July 9th that year, his cell phone began frequently connecting to a tower near the 1122 King Road home in Moscow. Between July and November 13th, the night of the murders, his phone linked to this tower 23 times, mostly late night, the state says.
We do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can't put his phone in that area on those times.
On the night of the murders, Kohberger allegedly turned off his phone and drove to Moscow. Surveillance captured his car near the crime scene. Around 4 a.m., the state believes he used a K-bar knife that record shows he bought in March 2022 to kill 4 students, leaving the sheath behind. An awake roommate
Saw him leave the house.
Security footage showed his car speeding away, and he turned his phone back on shortly after, says the state, adding his vehicle was later seen returning to Pullman.
That Mr. Kohberger went to what we would call DMV, motor vehicle licensing here in Idaho, in Pullman, to change his car registration from Pennsylvania to Washington,
where a front license plate is required. The prosecutor says security footage shows Kohberger's car without a front plate. After the semester, Kohberger returned home to Pennsylvania, and the FBI collected DNA from his family's trash, matching crime DNA closely to Kohberger's father. Once authorities issued an arrest warrant, they searched his family's home, apartment, and car, finding Kohberger's car
meticulously cleaned inside,
suggesting an attempt to hide evidence. And a sample of Kohberger's DNA later matched the DNA found on the knife sheath left behind. However, Kirsten Derrick, the knife used to kill these 4 students, is still unaccounted for, and the state did not mention a possible motive either. Hunter Bertram, 4 News Now.
All right, Hunter, thank you. And after the guilty plea, we consulted local defense attorney Bevan Maxey from Maxey Law Offices about what could happen after the sentencing. He explained that the plea agreement means Kohberger will not be able to appeal or reopen his case, as he waived his rights to do so. We also discussed whether a plea deal can be made without the victim's agreement. Maxey noted that since prosecutors work for the state, they can choose to offer a deal or not. However, a judge has the authority to reject any deal that is deemed inappropriate. Also today, prosecutor Bill Thompson became emotional in court before Kohberger changed his plea. Take a listen.
He then killed, intentionally, willfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice forethought, Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle.
We asked Bevan Maxey about how these cases can affect an attorney.
First of all, you put your heart and soul into something. If you work on it for years, this had to have eaten everybody up, as far as their time and their attention.
Maxey added, as attorneys, you get close to victims by hearing their stories, and it can become very personal.
In Firewatch coverage tonight, we're tracking a fire burning near Bonney Lake in Whitman County. It's burning about 30 minutes west of Roselia near South Texas Ferry Road and West Cheney Plaza Road. Level 3, meaning get out now evacuation orders are in place for people living in that area. Now here's a photo shared by crews near the fire's edge. You can see just how much smoke is filling the air. We have our Derek Strom there right now on the scene trying to gather the latest information. All right, forecaster Jason Valentine joining us in for Chris Crocker tonight.
And Jason, our current wind conditions are helping to push that fire out farther, and it's also spreading smoke into the area.
And again, heat and dry conditions are adding to it as well. Let's take a look at what winds are out there right now. The nearest city is Spangle that we can get to. 18-mile-per-hour winds right now near that fire. The good news, these winds are going to be slowing down. And look at all of the gusts. We're even in the 30-mile-per-hour range for Spokane Valley, and Moses Lake. So heavy winds out there. And again, this is the week of 4th of July. So that cocktail is out there for possible fires for the next couple of days. So looking down a little bit south of Spokane, Spangle area, we are going to be seeing these winds slow down as we get into probably sundown into our overnight period. They'll pick back up briefly as we get into our afternoon tomorrow, but nothing like we're seeing today. So the worst will be for the next probably 3 hours or so of winds for the crews battling that fire near Bonney Lake. So again, we wish them the best. And we have fire weather warning, or a red flag warning, for much of central Washington and leaking into the central part of Idaho. So what this is going to be bringing is 15 to 25-mile-per-hour winds, gusting that could be up to 40 miles per hour, and where humidity is low. So that adds to the fire danger. So we're keeping an eye on that. That's until 9 o'clock tonight. So a quick look at our overnight period. We are going to be looking at an overnight low around 60 degrees, staying warm there. Going to be cooler tomorrow. Let me get you ready for that. And your holiday weekend, that's my full forecast coming up.
All right, see you soon, Jason. The Inland Northwest continues to grieve tonight after Sunday's deadly ambush in Coeur d'Alene.
Our community honors the memory of Battalion Chiefs John Morrison and Frank Harwood, two men who dedicated their lives to protecting others. Marissa Rio is live at Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, where the healing process begins for firefighters coping with this unimaginable tragedy.
Derek Kirsten, the pain is still raw for firefighters in this area. A captain with Kootenai County Fire and Rescue told me today that this is something he's never experienced before. International Association of Firefighters has deployed a crisis team to support Coeur d'Alene Fire, Kootenai County Fire, and Northern Lakes Fire. All had members involved in this incident.
These men are friends. They're not just coworkers.
Firefighters in Kootenai County are now coping with the unimaginable loss of two of their own. Kootenai County Battalion Chief Frank Harwood and Coeur d'Alene Battalion Chief John Morrison.
They're people that we trusted with our lives. They trusted us. We worked many years, decades in some cases. And so, to try to sum up how we're doing and how we're feeling, context is the best I could do, which is we're holding together.
The IAFF's crisis team is here to assist crews with communications, peer support, and mental health professional help.
As difficult as this has been, it's nice to have not just our local brothers and sisters that work here with us, but to have people that have come in to say, hey, I'm disconnected from the people and the incident, but I'm connected because we're in the same firefighter family.
Captain Seth Hohenstreet says the crisis team is also helping them with funeral plans. He says they feel like family.
And so to have people come in and say, hey, we got your back, has taken such a stress off of us that thank you could never be sufficient.
Captain Hohenstreet says that the crisis team has been visiting stations throughout this area. He said there were 6 to 8 members at his fire station alone following yesterday's procession. He says having the support has made all the difference. Live in Kootenai County, Marissa Rio, 4 News Now.
Thank you, Marissa. And there are a lot of ways you can help support the victims and their families. You can donate directly to the Red and Blue Foundation. You can also donate in person at any First Interstate Bank branch. But be aware, scammers may try to exploit this tragedy. Be sure not to donate any money to non-verified links.
Harwood and Morrison will also be honored at Coeur d'Alene's annual American Heroes Parade. Organizers are finalizing the details, but they plan to begin the parade with 2 riderless horses in tribute to the fallen heroes. They also plan to honor Dave Tisdall, who was injured in the ambush. In an update we just received this afternoon, Tisdall is still in the ICU, but is now off of the ventilator and talking. That parade starts at 10 o'clock on Friday morning. For more details, including road closures and parking details, you can head to our website, kxoy.com.
Still ahead, they thought it was a routine grass fire, but it turned into a deadly ambush.
Why first responders say this tragedy is a wake-up call. Plus, a split verdict for Sean Diddy Combs, what the jury decided, and how much prison time he faces. You're watching 4 News Now at 6.
Here's a live look at Canfield Mountain in Coeur d'Alene. It is still closed as crews are working to put out that fire that started over the weekend. It is the same fire where these 3 firefighters were ambushed.
Fire Battalion Chiefs John Morrison and Frank Harwood were killed in that ambush, and Dave Tizol still recovering from the gunshot wounds that nearly took his life as well. Alexandra Conyards is live near Canfield Mountain. Alexandra, firefighters are trained to handle all kinds of situations, but not something like this.
That's completely right, Derek. This came as an utter shock to the emergency services community. These are people that literally run towards danger when everybody else runs away. But what was awaiting these firefighters in this mountain area when they were attending to that brush fire was completely unprecedented.
They were doing everything the way they were supposed to do it.
Those are the words of Pete Hawley with Kootenai County Fire and Rescue as he describes this deadly ambush that caught these seasoned firefighters completely off guard. Why?
It's not something we expect. It's not something our firefighters should have to deal with.
Those men were called to a grass fire, something that almost feels routine in our region, but creates anxiety during this time of the year.
Things like this, aren't normal, and it has to be processed.
Sean Thomas founded First Responders to support those in high-stress emergency professions. Spokane Police Lieutenant Jake Kernkamp, a member of that group, was among the 300 officers sent to the scene. He says that while police and firefighters each face life-threatening risks, this kind of crossover incident is rare and unexpected.
So just really encouraging agencies, police, fire, everybody across the board to plan for events such as this so that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and we can come together.
For Thomas, the hope is that conversation on this continues as our community grieves a devastating loss.
It really is important to talk about it and not just shove it down.
This is still very early on since that tragedy happened, but there are support services out there for the community and first responders. You can find a full list of those on our website at kxly.com. For now, reporting live, I'm Alexandra Conyards, sending it back to you.
All right, folks, we're heading into that holiday weekend. Are things going to be cooling down? We were still in the 90s today with winds, and again, fire danger is at a high. I'll get you prepared. My first alert weather forecast, that's next on 4 News Now at 6.
Welcome back. We are still monitoring the winds because there are those fires burning tonight.
Right,
Yes.
including that one down near Roselia.
Yes, and luckily those winds are going to be slowing down the next 3 hours, but it's going to take 3 hours for them to slow down. But we don't see too much wind kicking up as we head into our weekend, which is good news for the holiday. Good Wednesday to you. Plenty of sunshine still throughout our areas. 91 Coeur d'Alene, 89 in Spokane. And we're going to be seeing cooler temperatures tomorrow. If you've become tired of the hot temperatures, at least a little bit of a break. So a little less heat today. 10 degrees cooler tomorrow. It looks like it's going to be for Friday and Saturday as well. So a little respite from all of this extreme heat. Winds tapering off overnight, probably starting as we get to sundown, and some clouds for your 4th and a slight chance of maybe a little shower activity. So take a look at our high temperature trend. For the next 3 days, we're going to be in those lower 80s. Now we're still above our average for this time of year by only about 5 degrees. But again, July has started off with a sizzling rate up to 86 by Sunday, and then we're back to those 90s Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So the heat will be on, and following that week, we expect more heat. I'll get to that in a bit. Also want to take a look at our low temperature trend. We don't usually look at this, but usually we're right around 53, 52, but we are very warm in our overnight period. So if you don't have that AC, you definitely know that, and we'll be seeing even more of it as we get into our next week. So just get ready for the heat to be on. So our temperature is 91 right now in Coeur d'Alene, 89 in Spokane, 93 looks to be our hot spot in the Tri-Cities. So hot conditions throughout our areas. The 24-hour change, we're just a little bit off of where we were yesterday. Quite a bit for Pullman, down a full 10 degrees. We're going to be about 10 degrees cooler for some of our regions tomorrow as we start to level out. Again, still above our average for this time of year. Still warm, but you're definitely going to notice it. And again, temperatures in the following week of what we looked at are going to be in those mid to lower 90s to upper 80s. So just get ready for July to be very, very hot. So take a look at our radar. Quite a bit of thunder and lightning again rumbling through the middle part of Idaho, heading into Montana. Our areas, though, staying dry, and we're going to stay dry at least through tomorrow morning, and most likely as we get looking nice for your commute tomorrow. And as we get into Friday, we have some shower activity possible coming in from the south, but most likely it'll be held at bay. We're going to keep a very close eye on that as we get closer. Again, current winds, 10 mile per hour in Sandpoint, Moses Lake, 30 mile per hour gusts in Spokane and the Spokane Valley. Luckily, these winds will be slowing down. It looks like we'll see light winds, maybe a bit of a push in the afternoon tomorrow, but light winds for your 4th. That is good for firefighters. So looking at those low 80s through Saturday, 86 Sunday, and the heat and sunshine will be on next week. So a little bit of a respite, guys, as we head into that 4th of July weekend, but the heat will be back on next week.
Yeah, we're going to need it with all the people outside enjoying the 4th. Thank you, Jason. Still ahead, from senior citizens to college students, everyone will be affected by the newest version of the president's spending bill that's made it out of the Senate. What it could mean for you and your family, coming up.
And Sean Diddy Combs avoids life in prison, acquitted of the most serious charges in his federal trial. Why prosecutors still call the verdict a win, and what could happen next with dozens of civil lawsuits still looming. That's next on 4 News Now. Around the nation now, a split verdict in the Sean Diddy Combs federal criminal trial. The jury finding him not guilty on the most serious charges of sex trafficking and racketeering.
He was found guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. The judge denying his lawyer's request for Combs to be let out on bond until his sentencing. ABC's Rena Roy has the latest from outside the courthouse.
We love everybody watching. So happy.
The family of Sean Diddy Combs celebrating on the streets of Manhattan after a jury of 12 New Yorkers acquitted the hip-hop mogul of the most serious charges he was facing: racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. The verdict coming in after more than 14 hours of deliberations. Combs kneeling on the ground of the courtroom in prayer after the verdict was read. He was found guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, which in total carries a maximum punishment of 20 years in prison.
For Sean Combs and his defense team, this is a massive win. Sean Combs going to trial where he was facing life and being able to walk out with something under 10 years, well under 10 years possibly, that is a victory.
The jury began deliberating on Monday morning after hearing more than 6 weeks of testimony from 34 witnesses, including Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, who testified that Combs used power, violence, and fear to force her into so-called freak-offs or drug-fueled sex performances with male escorts. Prosecutors thanking her and the other alleged victims for sharing their harrowing stories. This footage at the heart of the case showing Combs kicking and dragging Ventura in 2016.
She was pleased that he's been found guilty and held responsible of 2 federal crimes, something that he's never been held responsible in his entire life. And she's happy.
According to a letter from her attorney, Ventura urging the judge to keep Combs detained ahead of his sentencing, saying she believes he poses a danger to the alleged victims who testified, including herself. The defense team arguing detaining Combs is inappropriate, saying he needs to be with his family. Combs had pleaded not guilty to all charges. His defense argued the women were willing participants and all sexual encounters were consensual. Now, Combs' legal troubles are far from over. He still faces more than 5 dozen civil lawsuits from alleged victims. Rena Roy, ABC News, New York.
And tune in tonight for an ABC News special report to hear new details from inside the courtroom. You can watch Verdict, the Diddy trial, tonight at 10. Hot and dry weather has the inland Northwest facing increased wildfire danger weeks earlier than usual.
Firefighters say they are ready, but need your help. Coming up, what they say you can do to help prevent disaster this summer. Plus, we're continuing to follow breaking news out of Boise, why family members of the University of Idaho murder victims are split over the decision.
Live from downtown Spokane, this is 4 News Now at 6:30.
We continue to follow that breaking news out of Boise. The families of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle are split on the prosecution's decision to offer their killer a plea deal. Bryan Kohberger admitting in front of the victims and his own family to murdering those 4 University of Idaho students in their off-campus home in 2022.
Before changing his plea, the prosecutor listed some of the key evidence to prove he committed those murders. That included cell phone data that they say showed Kohberger was not only in Moscow around the time of the murders, but was in Moscow several times between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., going as far back as July of that year. The state also pointing to Kohberger's Amazon purchase history that showed he had purchased a K-bar knife. That's the same type of blade that would fit the knife sheath found at the crime scene. They also say Kohberger's DNA was a match to the DNA found on that sheath.
Our Jordan Smith is live in Boise tonight outside of the courthouse. And Jordan, you were in there earlier today. Why did some of the families want this to go to trial?
Well, I mean, sort of what you were hinting at is that they felt that this was letting Kohberger off the hook. This wasn't going far enough. Really what was being debated was the idea of justice and what does that mean to each individual family. The Gonzalez family felt as though that this should have gone to trial and that the state should have consulted the families before making a decision like this, which takes the death penalty off the table and just leaves Kohberger to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
Inside the Ada County Courthouse, 30-year-old Bryan Kohberger claimed responsibility for brutally murdering Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Kohberger admitted to killing them in front of a packed courtroom that included their families and his own.
Did you kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being?
Yes.
His confession, a stunning reversal ahead of August's trial. Kohberger had previously maintained his innocence in the 962 days since these 4 friends were murdered. Today, he's reversing course, pleading guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 burglary charge. In exchange, the prosecution sweeps the death penalty off the table. Kohberger instead will be sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences.
We love you, Maddie, and we miss you.
Afterwards, Maddie's family stood before an army of reporters out front of the courthouse, their attorney reading a prepared statement in full support of the state's plea deal.
We support the plea agreement 100%. While we know there are some who do not support it, we ask that they respect our belief that this is the best outcome possible for the victims, their families, and the state of Idaho.
The Gonzalez family angry with this decision, saying this deal allows Kohberger to get off easy.
You don't think 4 life sentences is justice?
No, of course not. It's daycare. Prison is daycare, people.
And so that's where we are today. For better or worse, this is the first step towards closure for a lot of these families is Kohberger's plea agreement, which takes the death penalty off the table. It's an abrupt end to a case that's been shrouded in mystery since day one, since those students were discovered back in November of 2022. That being said, it's not over yet. Kohberger's sentencing is scheduled for July 23rd. But before that happens, family members of each of these victims will get the opportunity to confront Kohberger in that courtroom and tell him exactly what his actions have done to their family and how this has devastated their personal lives. We'll likely be back here in Boise when that happens. For now, reporting live here tonight, Jordan Smith, 4 News Now.
All right, Jordan, thank you so much. We're going to get to Jason Valentine now with a look at your forecast.
And it is windy out there tonight, which is not helping firefighters who are battling multiple fires right now. Jason?
Yeah, there's one by Bonnie Lake, and we're keeping an eye on the wind there. The winds are starting to dissipate, though, near Spangle, which about 20 miles out of Bonnie Lake. So 18-mile-per-hour winds there. The gusts are slowing down. We're still seeing some heavy gusts throughout all of our areas. We do expect those to slow down as we see the sun go down. So winds aren't going to be here with us throughout your evening. So forecast winds as we move along into the next couple of hours. You can see those winds starting to dissipate, especially overnight. We'll see winds pick back up to around 10 miles per hour tomorrow. But but we're not going to see the push that we're seeing today. And we're also seeing those winds in the central part of the state and kind of getting into a little bit of the middle part of Idaho. Red flag warning or a fire weather warning. That's good for the next 2.5 hours or so. So the fire danger is heightened there. That includes Moses Lake. Just the only difference between those areas and ours is our humidity is not below 10%. So evening planner, as we move into the next couple of hours, we're going to be looking at a pretty nice overnight period yet again. Overnight lows in the lower 60s. A nice morning for you tomorrow. But as we get into tomorrow, we're going to see noticeably cooler temperatures. And then we're going to see that for maybe your 4th as well. I'll get you and your family ready for all that in my First Alert weather forecast that's coming up later in the show.
Thank you, Jason. Well, hot weather, dry conditions, and strong winds. It is the perfect storm for a wildfire. And some in the inland Northwest are predicting we may see a lot of days like these in the next couple of months.
What they expect to see this summer. Today on National Wildland Firefighter Day, our Madeline Mullins spoke to firefighters about what to expect.
For wildland firefighters, conditions can change on the dime.
And we have to constantly be aware of where the fire is and where it's going, and it's very dynamic.
And that's especially true here in the inland Northwest, where natural areas and homes are right next to each other.
So now you have a fire that starts with a certain amount of risk in the wildland, but the risk increases exponentially and very rapidly as it moves closer to these homes, because wildland fire doesn't just threaten one home, it threatens a whole neighborhood.
This year, that risk may be higher than usual. The National Interagency Fire Center says from now until October, the potential for a wildfire here in the inland Northwest is above normal.
So we're about 3 weeks ahead of schedule going into high fire danger, which we're at already. Usually we don't get there till later in July.
And this is why fire departments prepare all year round for these next couple of months.
Prep everybody on, fire behavior, fire weather, along with firefighting tactics in specific with like the wildland aspect.
And it's because fire season is tough here in the inland Northwest that Spokane County Fire District 3 brings in seasonal firefighters every year.
When we have a big wildland fire, it drains the entire district. And so more people we have, the better.
And this year, Spokane Valley Fire has added another brush truck to its department.
One of the benefits to that is it allows more crews to get there quicker. We don't have to wait for other outside resources to assist us.
All of this preparation so that when a fire does happen, these firefighters are ready. But they can't do it alone. Firefighters say the public can make their jobs easier by signing up for Alert Spokane, having an evacuation plan in place, and to follow the burn ban all summer long. In Spokane County, I'm Madeline Mullins, 4 News Now.
Well, many local businesses are fundraising for the firefighters and families affected by Sunday's deadly ambush in Coeur d'Alene.
One local screen printing company is selling CDA Strong shirts with all the profits going to the families. Derek Strom watched the first batch of these shirts getting printed this afternoon.
We were all wondering what we could do here in Spokane.
The first batch of CDA Strong shirts are being printed at BSI Apparel in Spokane. Its owner says 100% of the profits from the $20 shirts will go directly to the firefighters and families affected by Sunday's shooting.
Fortunately, we have the capabilities of, pulling this off and raising money for people. And, and this is not our first gig, and, we love helping the community.
BSI Apparel just started printing these shirts today, and they only started taking orders for them online last night. And they've already gotten about 20 to 30 orders, but they're hoping to sell many more in order to make a sizable donation to these firefighters and their family members. BSI's CEO Greg Brunette says they raised thousands of dollars for the victims of the Freeman High School shooting, and they did a similar fundraiser for the victims of 9/11. He hopes these t-shirts will help support the victims of this tragic event as well.
All the profits will go to the families, and they're going to go directly to the families. We're going to reach out to them, during this process.
Brunette says they're only selling the shirts online and at their Spokane location right now. He hopes to partner with stores around the area to sell the shirts in as many places as possible, and stores have already reached out to him about partnering to raise money. In Spokane, Derek Strom, 4 News Now.
Well, Cal Raleigh has accomplished one of the best starts to a season in Mariner history.
The Big Dumper's tight race to the All-Star game in a couple of weeks is now done.
He is off to Atlanta as an All-Star starter. Catch just how significant this is for the Seattle organization right after the break. With one of the greatest starts to a season by any catcher in, frankly, American League history, Cal Raleigh earns another feather in his cap today with a starting nod in the 2025 All-Star Game.
Fly ball right field, sailing back, gone!
A common call so far this year, and it's the first time in Mariners history they have an All-Star starting catcher in Raleigh, picked by MLB fans over Toronto Blue Jay Alejandro Kirk today. Raleigh leads MLB in home runs with 33 and RBIs with 71, and this earned him just the second Mariner catcher spot in an All-Star game, the first since 1996. You can watch Cal in the big game July 15th at 5 p.m. Pacific time.
Month of June, swings here in concert into left field for a base hit. Cal Caro scores and ties the...
There's the first Double-A hit for the former Spokane Indians star Charlie Condon. He and Jared Thomas both making their debuts, the Hartford Yard Goats, today after a rainout postponed yesterday's contest. Condon hit 1 for 2, Thomas 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Game 2 of the doubleheader so far not going great for the two guys. They're both combined for an 0 for 4 start. The NHL draft wrap-up this weekend, and the Spokane Chiefs forward Owen Martin earning a draft spot, picked in the 3rd round by the Winnipeg Jets. Martin had a productive season, 34 points in just 39 games played due to injury, and scored 6 goals and 6 assists across the WHL playoffs. And it's a homecoming pick for the Manitoba native, and he spoke to the media today about just how ecstatic he is to grow in this organization.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable. Like a lot of people say, there's kind of no words to describe it. Growing up watching the Jets, every weekend or something, like watching games on TV, going to the rink as a kid, watching, when I was younger, I would come to these development camps and watch all these guys, and now being here, it's just kind of a full circle moment for me.
Martin now trains at the Winnipeg development camps and is expected to return to Spokane to play for the Chiefs this fall. Seattle Seahawks have an awfully familiar face returning to their defensive unit. The former Central Florida national champion, Shaquill Griffin, is back to Seattle, returning to the team that drafted him in 2017. Shaq had a resurgent year in Minnesota last season, as most tackles and interceptions since 2021, and the cornerback is now the only member of the 11-man Seattle 2017 draft class to still be on Seattle's roster. 6 of those 11 are retired now. Seahawks waived defensive tackle J.T. Woods to make room for the signing. Spokane Velocity returning to One Spokane Stadium tonight. They host Texoma FC for the first Spokane home game in 18 days. We'll have the highlights and sound from postgame all coming up tonight on Nightside. So safe to say the match is going to need some water breaks. I just finished watching the U.S. men's national team beat Guatemala. We'll have that on Nightside too, and they had to take so many breaks in St. Louis. It's hot.
Velocity's still doing really well this year, right?
Still first. Incredible run for them.
Awesome.
But it is hot. Yeah. Oh, man, to be out there. Thanks, Jack. Well, yesterday, the U.S. Senate narrowly passed an updated version of President Donald Trump's sweeping tax and spending cuts package. The multi-trillion-dollar bill would unlock tax cuts and funding boosts for national security.
It's expected to be partly paid for by the largest cuts to the federal safety net in decades. CNN's Michael Yoshida explains what this could mean for you and your family.
From seniors to college students, the wealthy to the poor, nearly every American could be affected by President Donald Trump's mega bill.
This bill has something for everybody.
The legislation, dubbed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, narrowly passed the Senate Tuesday, reduces taxes for nearly all households. But a Tax Policy Center analysis shows nearly 60% of those cuts would benefit only the top 20% of U.S. households, those making $217,000 or more yearly, while most middle and low-income Americans may not notice much of a change in their tax bill. It also temporarily provides tax breaks for some workers who get tips or overtime, and senior citizens through 2028.
Our goals were, how do we create an economy which works for working and middle America?
There's also roughly $150 billion in new funding for the president's immigration agenda, including money for a border wall, ICE's enforcement efforts, and detention centers. Some $3.3 trillion to the national deficit over a decade, according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office.
We're adding debt to our children and grandchildren who are defenseless. Debt is a curse.
And the biggest cuts to the federal social safety net in decades, including food assistance, the Affordable Care Act, and Medicaid.
Donald Trump's One Big Ugly Bill rips health care away from more than 17 million Americans.
Experts say it would have a ripple effect throughout the healthcare system, especially on rural hospitals, which likely would have to reduce staff, limit services, or close their doors entirely. In Washington, I'm Michael Yoshida reporting.
Good Wednesday evening. Hope you had a wonderful day today. Hope you have great plans for the holiday weekend. It's a little bit of less heat today. 10 degrees cooler, though, as we get into tomorrow. Now, we're seeing quite a bit of wind action throughout all of our areas. That's going to taper off overnight, if not when the sun goes down. And we do expect some clouds for your 4th, but looking okay so far. So our high temperature trend, we are going to be cooler. We're still going to be above our average, upper 70s for this time of year, but we're going to be right around those lower 80s. But then we're going to ascend back into the 90s starting Monday and mid 90s Tuesday and Wednesday. We even have the possibility of seeing a triple digit or two next week. We're going to keep a very close eye on that, but still looking at mid 90s by next week at this time. Right now, though, lower 90s, upper 80s for most of our areas. Look at Pullman already at 81, 93 for the Tri-Cities. That is our hot spot. A bit of a change for some of our areas, a big change. Pullman down 10 degrees from yesterday at this time. We're going to see double-digit or upper single-digit change in our temperatures tomorrow as we do cool down. And we do expect to see, though, those hot temperatures. You saw those mid-90s next week. Beyond that, we expect to be right around that range. It's going to be staying hot in a sizzling July. So looking at our radar, we're still free and clear from shower activity, but look at all this going through Missoula and through the central part of Idaho and the eastern part of Oregon. We're looking to miss those showers, but as we head into 4th of July evening, we have a small chance of a little bit of shower activity coming in. So taking a look at our winds, my goodness, we have heavy winds again. Gusts right around 30 miles per hour for most of our cities. That will be slowing down, though, as we get to the next couple of hours. So about 2.5 hours from now. So 7-day forecast. Lower 80s, plenty of sunshine. Again, slight chance of some evening showers. I'll have a good update for you tomorrow on that. And looking at plenty of sun into our next work week with the heat coming back on. But if you're tired of the heat, a nice vacation from that for your holiday weekend.
All right, thanks, Jason. And before we go to break, here's the look at ABC's primetime lineup tonight.
Welcome back. Let's take a sneak peek at your Thursday. Plenty of sunshine and a little bit of cooler temperatures. I, for one, don't mind getting out of the 90s at least briefly. We'll be there for your 4th of July as well. A little bit of cloud coverage as the day goes on, but again, those winds you're experiencing right now will be slowing down once we get to our evening hours.
Okay, yeah. Pretty good, actually, for 4th of July weekend.
And for sleeping.
That too.
See you at 11.